The position. Falling after Eve. Adam's choice. Adam had the choice to suffer with Eve. Compassion plays a critical role in the facilitation of shadow integration. While Eve's fall mirrors Lucifer's fall, it is Adam's fall that mirrors the fallen angel's fall. In other words, those who have chosen to fall after Lucifer in pursuit of him. Did the angels who followed Lucifer do it because they wanted power, or did they follow him because they did not want Lucifer to suffer alone? Compassion is a critical piece of the anti-curse formula to counter-curse the first curse. Compassion means to suffer with. The power of choosing. God created Adam with the power of naming all of God's creation. Adam was made from the earth, but gifted with a piece of God's heart, sewed inside Adam's spirit called the soul, which is part of God's heart, with all the codes from the book of life embedded within. Contrary to popular belief, Adam did not bite out of ambition, since pre-fall Adam's algorithm is God-defined in love. Based on the properties of love, the real reason why Adam bit is because he did not want Eve to suffer and die alone. In that moment, when Eve gave Adam the apple, Adam was given a choice. Follow Eve down to hell so that she will not have to suffer alone, or be safe in the garden and let her die alone. When Eve offered the fruit of knowledge to Adam, she did it with the good intention of wanting Adam to become stronger, so that Adam may be able to defend her against the clever serpent. However, the shadow side of her offer is that she did not want to suffer and die alone, and she did not believe that Adam was strong enough and wise enough to protect her from the snake, so he needed a boost. She saw the fruit of knowledge as the journey of knowing the fullness of God's wisdom. However, the shadow side of this wisdom is that she is overwhelmed by seeing evil. Focusing on the shadow too much has distracted her from seeing good, both in herself and in others. When Eve bit the apple, she did it in faith. But when she offered the apple to Adam, she did it in fear. Fear that Adam won't stand a chance against the cunning serpent, and fear that she will suffer and die alone. Eve's first curse. After biting the fruit, Eve could see herself through Satan's perspective of her, which really is a projection of his own shadow unresolved. Not enough. Satan's projection of her as not enough is Eve's first curse the moment she started believing in this lie. A curse is the inherited projection of someone else's shadow. Redemptive hope in Adam and Eve's seeds. After Adam bit the fruit, he was able to see the shadow, not enough, projected upon Adam. In this case, Adam saw Eve's opinion of him as not good enough to mean because he is naked. This is a curse because it is still based on a lie, and it shifts Adam's mindset from being loved by God while whole in his divine makeup and intimately designed to connect with God as not enough, not sharp enough, not worthy enough, not good enough, because he is naked. Now, Adam shares the burden of the sickened, conscious state of mind and being with Eve. The seeds of grace. Awakened Adam could also see the noble shadow of Eve's fear of dying and suffering alone. However, unlike what Eve did to the serpent, the snake deceived me, fallen Adam did not expose Eve's shadow. Eve wanted me to bite because she didn't want to suffer and die alone. Fallen Adam covered fallen Eve, while fallen Eve called out fallen Lucifer. Thus, Adam is spared from false humility, but is left with false pride, as we shall see later in this story. The significance of Adam's covering of Eve's shadow, specifically her fear of dying alone, aligns with pre-fall Eve's covering of Satan's location of the lie at the moment of temptation. For you will be like God is the lie, for you will surely not die, is the truth. While Satan thought that the statement, for you will be like God, was the truth, and you will surely not die is the lie, it is pre-fall Eve who knew Satan's mistake, but covered his misunderstanding of God's goodness. This sowed the hope that one day, one of their offspring will assume and ultimately refine Eve's faith in God's goodness and Adam's compassion for Eve's suffering, inspired by Eve's grace for the snake and Adam's grace for fallen Eve. Both Adam and Eve's choice to bite formulates a power more powerful than the shadow, gifted by the Holy Spirit, called grace, which is the integrated shadow state of the mind, body, and soul with the Spirit, the Holy Spirit. To carry a curse is to internalize the projection of another person's shadow. What is a curse? A curse is the projection inherited from another person's shadow that becomes believed by the person who receives the projection from the one who projected it. A curse is based on lies. A curse aims to trap the soul and perpetuate more curses, like a chain reaction. Adam began seeing himself through Eve's shadow projection of Adam as weak, the way fallen Eve saw herself as weak when she perceived the projection that the snake had placed upon her during a time when Lucifer's shadow is, I'm not good enough. When a shadow is projected upon another, and when that projection is internalized and believed in, then the shadow becomes alchemized. An alchemized shadow is known as a curse because it is based on a lie. In this case, Adam was already good enough when Eve's projection upon him as not good enough started to rub off on him. Adam's why. This is perhaps why Adam chose to bite from the fruit. Perhaps on an intrinsic level, he suspected that the weight of judgment Eve carried was too heavy for her, so he had chosen to share this weight with her. You can easily break one stick, but it becomes exponentially harder when bundles of sticks stick together. God commanded Adam to protect Eve. Like sonars in blue dolphins, like honing devices among birds, like drones that obey the commands of Queen Bee, Adam finds the deepest satisfaction in protecting, providing, and professing Eve. Anything less wears away at his soul. Adam is like the sheath that protects the sharp katana sword. That is why, after he bit from the fruit, Adam kept his promise to God. He covered Eve, at the expense of dying and lying for her. He does this by reminding her of the silver lining in their suffering, because I am naked. God gave Adam an Adam's apple in the throat chakra to remind Adam the way of his why when he chose to fall to protect and serve Eve. He does this by always addressing the silver lining when the spirit of the toxic feminine rises. What is the toxic feminine spirit? The spirit of fallen Eve who judges without forgiveness, superseding God's grace. Let's observe. When Eve asked Adam to bite, she judged Adam as weak and dumb compared to the scales of the wise serpent. Eve's new eye focused on power for power's sake, forgetting that the true power is the power of love. Eve had reasoned she was doing Adam a favor by offering him the fruit of knowledge so he can scale up, pun intended. What Eve had forgotten was the virtue of nakedness. Cowardice is a weakness, but nakedness is a strength. God works in paradoxes. My grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. 2 Corinthians 12, 7-10, New International Version. God asked Adam, "Where are you?" God did not ask Adam, "Where are you?" because he could not find Adam. God is omnipotent, so he knew exactly where Adam was. So why would God ask Adam this question? Because where determines one's position and how they relate to another. When Adam's evil eye was opened, he had judged his own nakedness as weak, so he hid from God. He too, like Eve, like Lucifer, felt that he was not good enough. So when God asked Adam why he hid from God, Adam lied by saying, I hid because I was naked. But the Lord God called to the man, Where are you? He answered, I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid. Genesis 3:9-10. I heard you, and I was afraid because I was naked. Because I was naked is the silver lining. Nakedness reveals the shadow, the duality that exists as a result of free will. Adam, now knowing evil, can see his own shadow. Why was he afraid? He was afraid that God would punish Eve for having a shadow. To this day, most religions are carrying out and acting out Adam's curse by believing that God would punish man or man's loved ones for carrying noble and alchemized shadows. Thus, Adam lied to God by saying that he hid from God as a result of his nakedness. However, Adam's lie to God was a double-edged sword. On the one hand, he protected Eve by choosing to suffer with her in the act of biting and hiding her from God, because he thought God would destroy her because of her shadow. On the other hand, he lied to God by equating his hiding from God with his nakedness, which is in direct opposition to the truth, since illuminating the shadow by exposing the naked truth to God is always good, because there is an opportunity for redemption that is within the realms of God's grace. Adam's sin is taking Eve's burden solely upon himself by reproducing Eve's lie to God as his lie. I hid from you because I was naked, when the truth was, I hid Eve from you because she is naked. As in seeing Eve's shadow, you are not good enough, and I don't want to die and suffer alone, is a shadow, and that shadows are a bad thing. What fallen Adam did not realize at the time was that shadows based on lies is a bad thing, but shadows based on truth is a good thing. You are not good enough is an alchemized shadow based on a lie, and this is a bad thing. Eve does not want to die and suffer alone is a noble shadow based on the truth, and this is a good thing. So Adam took Eve's shadow upon himself and hid from God that I am not good enough, an alchemized shadow based on a lie, and I bit because I did not want Eve to die and suffer alone, a noble shadow based on the truth. Let's break this lie down. Pre-fall Adam, I will die for you, Eve. Fallen Adam, I will lie for you, Eve. Pre-fall Adam, according to God, nakedness is good. This is true. That's because nakedness embraces the full duality of free will, both shadow and spirit integrated. Fallen Adam, according to Eve's projection, which came from Lucifer's projection, nakedness is bad. This is false. This implies that shadows are bad. Shadows are not all bad. The noble shadow is good. I did not want Eve to suffer and die alone, Adam. I bit the apple in faith of God's goodness, Eve. Doubting God's goodness is bad, Lucifer. The alchemized shadow is bad because it is based on a lie. I hid from you because I am naked, Adam. Bite from the apple because you are not good enough, Eve. I bit from the apple because I have God's goodness, Satan. Adam did the right thing by protecting Eve, even if it meant dying for her. However, Adam's original sin isn't dying for Eve, but rather lying to God about Eve and hiding Eve's alchemized shadow from God, thereby suffering the consequences of a crime he did not commit and bearing the weight of this alchemized shadow with Eve without God's help. The Y chromosome. Adam did not hide from God because he was afraid that God would destroy him. He hid Eve from God because he was afraid that God would destroy Eve. This was the first reaction to Adam's ability to see the shadow. He saw Eve's shadow side of why she offered the fruit to Adam. It was the same spirit that inspired Adam to bite the fruit, knowing full well that God's warning that they would surely die would be true. Both fallen Eve and pre-fall Adam had the same exact motivation for Adam's biting the fruit of knowledge. Eve does not want to die alone. Adam does not want Eve to die alone. This is the integrated shadow state. Eve's noble shadow, I do not want to die alone, aligns with Adam's spirit. I do not want Eve to die alone. It is in full alignment. Furthermore, Adam has spoken the silver lining in the suffering that Adam has willingly taken on. Because I am naked. Adam does not expose Eve's shadow to God because Eve did not want to die alone, but instead, he tells God that he hid from him because he was naked. While this is true, it is also true that he hid Eve from God because she is also naked. Yet, Adam covered Eve. His love for her is simple. He bit because he does not want her to suffer and die alone. He bit because he loved her. The nakedness of his love for her is why he bit. Thus, when he answered God, I hid because I am naked, he really meant I hid Eve from you because we are naked. Although Adam lied to God, Adam also created the silver lining behind his suffering. Nakedness is simple. Nakedness is truth. Nakedness is duality. However, in Adam's fallen state, Adam's lie to God, I hid because I am naked, created a life lie that Adam and all his children have been acting out since the beginning of time, hiding the truth from God because of one's nakedness. The three curses of Adam. 1. Adam lied to God by taking on Eve's projection upon himself, acting as if nakedness is bad, when in fact nakedness, which means authenticity, love, and simplicity, is good. Rather than trusting God to carry the burden with Adam in helping Eve, he had distanced himself from God and attempted to fix Eve on his own willpower. The problem with this is that trying to fix someone else is impossible because it violates their free will and ends up becoming controlling. Also, in the attempt to fix someone else's shadow, one is tempted to project one's own shadow onto the other, thereby alchemizing one's shadow. 2. Adam hid from God, in essence distancing himself from God because of his doubt in God's goodness. This is Lucifer's shadow projection upon Eve that then was projected onto Adam. Because Adam now believes that God is a punishing God rather than a loving and forgiving God, Adam's natural inclination is to hide himself and Eve from God to avoid God's punishment. Prior to biting, Adam was always honest with God, confiding and communing with him. Adam felt safe in sharing his innermost thoughts. Now, Adam no longer believes in a good God, but rather a conditional and punishing one, a hellfire God. 3. Adam lied to himself, equating his nakedness as bad when God had originally judged their nakedness as good. The truth is that God can hear the innermost thoughts of Adam's heart, both in its alchemized and noble shadow states. It's the fact that God respects divine sovereignty, boundaries, space, that God does not impose, force, or manipulate Adam's free will. When Adam bit the apple, he had forgotten how to trust God. Adam had also forgotten his divine position in relationship to God. However, God's goodness was forgotten but not forsaken. Like Lucifer, Adam expected God's punishment, but instead, Adam received God's grace. For God so loved the world, he created a loophole that allowed life to arise from death. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. John 3:16, King James Version. The nature of Adam's curse is self-isolation when suffering, thinking that his self-will is sufficient when it's not, and that self-reliance is the key to success, when in fact it is quite the opposite. When Adam had an issue that needed resolving, he no longer relied on God, because Adam could see the shadow side of God's love, which is God's justice. Thus, Adam was running on self-reliance, self-will, and covering up. Adam did not know of God's grace as the solution to God's judgment. The problem of distrusting God is that Adam is left with two curse projections and one curse from the life lie that Adam had created when he told the first lie, "I hid from you because I am naked." Adam had inherited fallen Lucifer's curse of "I doubt God's goodness," fallen Eve's curse of "nakedness is bad," and now his own curse, "I must hide from God because I am naked." Adam's apple. Adam lost his voice, so now the apple is lodged inside his own throat, making it difficult for him to speak to God and to come forth with full transparency when faced with life's difficulties. Even though God knows the hearts and minds of all those he has created, God does not impose, force, or manipulate anyone into doing anything against one's free will. God allows Adam to hide. Perhaps in the act of hiding, Adam also lost his courage. Now Adam has three curses to contend with. 1. Doubting God's goodness, fallen Lucifer's curse. 2. Judging nakedness as bad, fallen Eve's curse. And finally, 3. Hiding from God because of his nakedness, fallen Adam's curse. God judged that it is not good for the sons of Adam to bear the weight of Eve's judgment and the projections of fallen Lucifer and fallen Eve's alone. Hiding from God is not good, especially if works are run on self-reliance, void of any real connection in relationship with and trust in the divine. Thus, the position of Adam's relationship to God has shifted from intimate to distant. Luckily, God has created counter curses in the form of a curse to curse their respective curses. In order to understand the nature of God's curses as counter curses, we must first understand the implication of Adam and Eve's respective life lies.